This is not supernatural creepy, but is one of the more disturbing and surreal experiences of my life. One early morning, a few short years ago, I am walking to my bus stop and eating a banana. It is dark, misty, and around 5 a.m., and I am internally debating something trivial, like if I want my daily Starbucks before or after the commute. As I approach the dimly lit corner on my street, a tall man in a black mask steps out of the dark alleyway to my left. Sleepy and disoriented, I barely acknowledge him when he shouts, "Put down your fucking purse," and he points his gun to my head. Things start to click. The man says, "Put down your bags," and I tell him, "Okay, okay, I'm putting them down over here." He orders me to walk over them towards the alleyway, and he tells me to get down on the ground, and I agree. I say, "I'm coming, okay, okay." My heart is beating a million miles a minute, and my hands still smell sticky with banana. I know I need to get away. I don't know why, but my mouth won't stop working. "Look, see, I'm on the ground. My stuff is over there. Please just take my stuff," I say. But he doesn't like it. The man says, "Shut up, please." He gets on top of me and puts the gun to my head. At this point, I should mention the fact that I'm on the way to coach a high school practice. I'm dressed like a dude with huge baggy pants, a hat, and a jacket. And if not for my telltale voice, I look like a prepubescent 90 rap star. Anyway, as the guy gets on top of me, gun to my head, he looks at me and pauses. I can't tell you why I know this, but I swear that at this moment, it clicks for him that I'm a woman. He gets off of me, stands up, and points to the dark alley. He says, "Come with me." My stomach began to hurt. I remembered that there had been a recent string of sexual assaults in my neighborhood, during the daytime no less. When the man points down that dirty alleyway, my internal voice speaks up. It says to me, "There's no way in hell you're going to go down there without a fight." "But he has a gun, you dipshit." "Follow me," says the real voice, interrupting my internal monologue. So I do what I do best. I talk. "I'm coming. I'm following you," I call. And the man makes a crucial mistake. He believes me. I take one, two tiny steps backwards towards the sidewalk, and he turns his body and his gun toward the alley. This is my moment, I thought to myself. I take a deep breath, tuck my head down in case he starts shooting, and start sprinting away as fast as I can. I hear a voice screaming in a high-pitched wail before I realize that it's mine. After running 6 or 7 blocks, I head back to my apartment, hoping he's not there to see where I lived. The police check out the alleyway an hour later. The potential attacker is long gone, as expected. Only evidence of the encounter is my banana peel browning in the alleyway and the adrenaline rush that I couldn't shake from days. I would be lying if I said that the experience doesn't bother me still. I'm so fortunate to mainly be haunted by the what ifs and the what ifs. Every time I stay at my grandma's house, I hear someone walking upstairs. It starts out one side of the room and casually walks to the other and stops. This will happen maybe twice a night. I didn't start hearing it until I was about 14, when my grandparents made me start sleeping in a different room on the first floor because they started sleeping in separate bedrooms. Regardless, both of their rooms are also on the first floor. For a little backstory, I've always been afraid to go upstairs in their house. I don't know why, but it's always freaked me out, and I refuse to ever go up there alone. For context, I'm 23 now and still won't go up alone. There's one room specifically, though. It's a long, narrow bedroom. When you open the door, there are closets on your left and right, and a bed placed roughly in the middle of the room, and a window on the far side, the opposite of the door. I was told growing up by my grandparents that the sons of the previous owner claimed to see a gorilla come out of a closet at night and dance around the room and go back into the closet. I thought nothing of this story until I had to start sleeping in the other room, the room located directly below the scary room upstairs. So that night, we all go to bed. The lights in the house are off. I'm still awake, lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and I heard it thump, 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 starting at one end of the room upstairs. It got closer to me, passed right above me even, and continued to the end of the room where it stopped. At this point, I'm wide awake, terrified out of my mind. There was no question in me that I had heard footsteps. I knew that slow, casual pace. I was freaked out and went to my grandpa's room. I had told him what I had heard, and he told me that the house is old and it creaks. But he turned the dining room light on me, so I felt a little safer. I tried going back to sleep. Then it started again, this time from where it ended the first time, by the window upstairs. It walks over me again and stops when it reached my door. I thought it was over until 5 seconds later when I heard it coming down the stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, silence as it reached the landing. And 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and silence again as it reached the first floor. I was frozen in shock at this point. Whatever it was on my floor of the house, and sadly unaffected by the dining room light. I was staring at the doorway to my room. The dining room light was shining in, and my vision began to distort. I felt dizzy with fear, so I pulled back the blankets over my head, and suddenly heard a scratching sound from inside of my room. I knew exactly where it was coming from, too. My grandpa's gun case. It was very obvious sound scratching on the wood, long scratches down the front of the gun case door. I could even hear the door ever so slightly tapping against the frame as each scratch began. I tried to scream and couldn't. I took a second to take a deep breath and let out a scream. In seconds, my grandpa had made it to my room, and I was relieved. Needless to say, he still didn't believe me. So I did what any normal person would do. I draped a sheet over the side of the bed and slept underneath it. I wrapped myself tight in a comforter, put on headphones, and turned my back to the door. There could be a party of ghosts in my room, and I wouldn't even know. The next morning, my grandpa told my grandma about what happened the night before. She said, "Oh, that's silly, you know. Your cousin woke me up the last time she stayed here. She came in my room saying I hear footsteps. I slept under the bed for the rest of my week's stay with them. I've stayed there countless times since that happened, and I hear footsteps every time. I sleep on top of the bed now, but I keep my back to the door and sleep with headphones on. I haven't heard it come down the stairs since that first night, but if it does, I don't want to know." My uncle, he used to work a lot when I was younger. He's done a lot of different things to make money, but one consistent thing that he did in the summer months and into the late fall was that he painted houses. It's a legitimate business and everything. He's got a truck with a number and a name and supplies in the back. The works. Every now and then, he would call my dad when he needed a little extra help, and I'd work for him. No big deal, really. It's just painting houses. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it takes a while to paint a whole house. If the weather conditions aren't right, you can't paint. One particular fall was extremely wet. It rained what it felt like every single day. My uncle would paint multiple houses at a time, so sometimes he would get caught up due to situations like these, and I'd work a little more than usual. That was fine by me though. The job wasn't hard and it paid well. Anyway, it was a warm day for late fall, but there was still a distinct chill in the air, one that kind of penetrated through you and stung your soul. My uncle had this job he had to finish. It was in an old Victorian house in a quiet part of the town. A lady and her husband, who happened to be an author. Due to the weather, it had taken longer than expected to paint the house, and there was family issues going on at the time which further complicated things. So my uncle gets a call one day from the lady who lives at the house. She says that her husband is trying to write his next book, but he keeps getting distracted by the scaffolding outside the house, so she wanted to know if we could come over and finish the job as soon as possible. My uncle was always an honest businessman. They had contacted him to do the job midsummer, but he had lots of jobs that summer, and the wet conditions I mentioned above made it difficult to finish anything. However, these people were insistent but really polite, and not wanting to lose customers or get a bad recommendation, my uncle decided to put the house as a high priority. After all, it would only take a day or two to finish. So we showed up to this house mid-afternoon. Like I said, it was a weird, kind of chilly that day, and I also remember a really eerie calm. The day was slightly overcast, so everything was shrouded in gray. It was like the perfect setting for a mystery crime novel. So we arrived at this house, and my uncle and I moved to the back. The front of the house was already done, so there was nothing left up there. My uncle, being the more experienced painter, would always do the touch-ups. I would simply apply the first coats since they took little skill. Anyway, we get back to the house and he asked me if I'm scared of heights. I was 17 at the time, and although they do creep me out a little, I didn't want to seem like a child in front of my uncle, so I told him I wasn't. He was happy to hear that. He has me climb up the scaffold to the third floor and finish the upper section of the house. There was a window up there, a small little oval one that looked into the attic. The attic also happened to be the husband's study, where he would do most of the writing. So I'm climbing up the scaffolding, cans of paint dangling behind me, various paint brushes and other tools in the utility belt my uncle let me borrow. I get to the top of the scaffolding and set all my supplies down. I crack open a can of paint and start painting like I had a few hundred times before. Outside of the temperature, the overcast, and the eerie calm, this day was like no other. I'm working my way across the top part of the house when I get to the window that looks into the study. I bend down, dip my paintbrush, and stand back up above the window. The window was in my direct line of sight, and I couldn't help gazing in. See a man, the husband, staring back at me with a face of completely barren of any emotion at all. I had never seen a face so devoid of feeling before. I still haven't. Of course, I get startled and take a step back. I chuckle and smile at the guy, but he doesn't smile back. Instead, while remaining completely emotionless, he draws out a pistol up to his head that he was holding in his hand the whole time and proceeds to blow his brains out without ever breaking eye contact right in front of me while I'm staring at him. In utter shock, I gasp and let out the smallest scream as I step back in fear. Only I stepped back a step too much and fell off the scaffolding. Alerted by the gunshot, my uncle looked up just in enough time to see me fall off the scaffolding from the third story. I was lucky enough to land in a bush and only suffer a broken ankle and a few scratches. The biggest wounds happened in my head. I had to go to counseling for a while. It's been years since then. I still remember that man's face and what he did. I've never forgotten it. It will always be burned into the back of my head. I know why. Looking back, his face was so devoid of emotion because he never felt any emotion at all. He didn't care at all what he was doing and who he impacted. As it turns out, the man was seriously depressed and facing marital issues with his wife. Combined with a few too many nights drunk on whiskey and facing writer's block, I guess he decided he couldn't take it anymore. His wife moved out of the house shortly after, and we never finished the job. To this day, that house remains abandoned, and to this day, I try not to drive down the street it's on. I'm scared that if I do, and happen to pass the backyard, I'll see that man staring back at me from that window, cold and emotionless.